People talk a lot about first impressions, but very few admit how often they get them spectacularly wrong. That was exactly the case the morning the single dad veteran walked into the community center carrying a neon green lunchbox, decorated with cartoon ducks and a heroic level of exhaustion. Someone whispered, "Dude looks like he fought a war just to make it here," which, ironically, wasn't wrong. He actually had, but the room didn't know that yet. All they saw was a slightly rumpled dad trying to balance a coffee, a folder of job applications, and a kid's lunch that seemed to be actively trying to escape his grip. When he walked toward the table of job training participants, a few of the office interns snickered, not out of cruelty. They were just young enough to believe sarcasm was a personality trait. One of them said, "Watch out. This guy's gonna overthrow the break room." Another added, "Nah, he's probably here for the free snacks." If kindness had a sound that day, it was definitely not coming from that direction. But the single dad, whose name was Marcus, did what veterans do best. He pretended he didn't hear anything and proceeded to sit down quietly, shoulders heavy with that stubborn mixture of pride and exhaustion that only someone who has lived several lives in one lifetime can carry. What nobody knew was that he wasn't just a veteran. He was an archery champion, the kind that actually won medals, the kind that could hit a target so precisely the arrow could split another arrow. Basically the real-life version of a superhero, minus the cape and plus the duck lunchbox. The session began, and the CEO was scheduled to arrive for a quick motivational drop-in. Most people were rehearsing, questions that made them sound ambitious but not desperate. Marcus was just trying not to fall asleep. His daughter had insisted on a Pillow Fort movie marathon the night before, and he didn't have the heart to say no. That's the thing about single parents. They function on caffeine, love, and the sheer panic of being in charge of a tiny human. Halfway through the introductions, one of the interns accidentally bumped into Marcus, spilling a stack of foam practice arrows across the floor. They were supposed to be used later for a team-building exercise, something silly involving balloon targets and very questionable safety regulations. The intern mumbled, "Oops, guess that's for the kids' table." More snickers. Marcus Neal collected the arrows without comment, but he held them with the ease of someone familiar with their real version. A quiet sort of humor flickered across his face, the type of smile that said, "If only you knew." Not smug, not condescending, just amused in the way someone gets when life presents them with an inside joke only they understand. A moment later, the CEO walked in. People straightened postures so fast you could hear vertebrae recalibrating. And he meant it. The thing about people who've been through hard things is that small unkindness doesn't break them. They've already been reforged. The CEO wasn't laughing, though. She was thinking, evaluating, connecting dots faster than anyone else could see. And in that moment, before anyone else knew what was happening, she had already made a decision. The CEO wasn't known for impulsive choices, but she was famous for recognizing value before the world caught up, while everyone else in the room continued, pretending they understood the workshop worksheets. She focused squarely on Marcus. The shift in the room was subtle, like someone turning down the background. Noise of judgment and turning up the clarity of reality. She asked him questions, real ones. The kind that dig for truth, not for bragging rights. What brought you here? What do you want to build next? What do you need, not just today, but moving forward? Questions that show intention, not formality. Marcus answered with honesty that was both straightforward and unintentionally funny. When she asked him what he did after retiring from archery competitions, he shrugged and said, "Mostly parenting. And laundry. A lot of laundry. Enough to qualify as an Olympic event." A couple of people laughed, not mockingly this time, but genuinely. Humor can be a bridge when it's handled with sincerity. Meanwhile, one of the interns scribbled something on their notepad that looked suspiciously like a life lesson. Another quietly slid the foam arrows farther from the edge of the table in what appeared to be a symbolic apology to the universe. The CEO pressed a little more, not unkindly, just enough to understand the weight behind his calmness. "Why archery?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "It taught me patience," he said. "Precision, focus, and that sometimes the target is farther than it looks." There was something deeply human in the way he said it, simple words carrying years of complexity. Somewhere between that sentence and his steady way of speaking, the CEO saw exactly what others had missed. She excused herself briefly, walking toward the coordinator with purpose. No whispers, no dramatic announcements, just quiet, decisive action, the kind that changes the trajectory of a life. A minute later, she returned and sat down again. "Marcus," she said, "I want you to consider something. We run a leadership and resilience program. It's built for teens and young adults who've been through difficult transitions. We teach focus, discipline, emotional regulation, everything archery naturally builds. I think you'd be a perfect mentor for it." Silence hit the room like a delayed reaction. Marcus blinked, unsure. He had come here looking for something stable, something simple, maybe. A clerical job to keep the bills afloat and still give him time for his daughter. Not a leadership role, not a mentorship program, not something that felt meaningful in a way he hadn't expected. I don't know if I'm qualified," he said. "Oh, you're qualified," the CEO replied, with the confidence of someone who bet on people and rarely lost. "You've lived the lessons we're trying to teach. And kindness? You have that in ways you don't even notice." One of the interns, finally brave enough, added, sorry for earlier. We were kind of dumb." It was the world's most unimpressive apology, but the effort was there. Another intern nudged them and whispered, "Stop talking before you make it worse." Marcus smiled again. Not the forced smile people put on to appear unfazed, but a genuinely warm one, kindness reclaiming its place in the room. "It's all right," he said. "We all have off days." The CEO stood, signaling the end of her unplanned visit. "Marcus, let's talk after the workshop. I want to hear more about your vision." The interns watched her go, then immediately turned to Marcus with newfound respect bordering on awe. "Dude, you're like a hidden superhero," one said. Another, trying to lighten the mood, whispered, "If you ever need someone to hold a target, actually forget that." Bad idea. Dark humor, when it's gentle and self-aware, has a way of diffusing tension. It worked. The room eased. The rest of the workshop went differently, not because Marcus suddenly became the center of attention, but because everyone finally started treating each other like humans, instead of background characters. Small kindnesses rippled outward. Someone offered him a fresh cup of coffee. Another picked up a pencil he dropped without turning it into a side comment. Even the foam arrows stayed safely contained, as though they too understood their role in the universe had shifted. After the session, the CEO and Marcus met privately. She explained the mentorship program in detail, the community partnerships, the resilience curriculum, and the archery-based focus training. She didn't sugarcoat the challenges, but she didn't underestimate him either. Marcus listened quietly. "This sounds bigger than anything I expected today," he admitted. "That's because you came here expecting limits," she replied. "But I see potential. Not the flashy kind people brag about on social media, the steady kind that changes lives." He considered her words. He thought about his daughter, about stability, about purpose, about the fact that maybe, just maybe, life wasn't done surprising him. "Well," he said slowly, "I can't promise I won't show up with a duck lunchbox." The CEO grinned. "Good, our team could use more personality." That was the moment the offer was sealed. Not in a formal contract, but in genuine human understanding. A quiet deal written in mutual respect. By the end of the week, Marcus was officially part of the mentorship program. Word spread through the center. But this time, the whispers weren't mocking. They were admiring. The same interns who had laughed at him earlier began asking him for tips, life advice, even archery basics, but like safe basics, one clarified, clearly traumatized by foam arrow guilt. Marcus didn't brag. He didn't lecture. He simply showed up with kindness, patience, humor, and that steady focus that had guided him through so many chapters of life. And the CEO? She didn't fall instantly in a romantic sense. This wasn't that kind of story. She fell instantly in respect, in recognition, in certainty that she had stumbled across someone extraordinary when everyone else only saw ordinary. The single dad veteran, the exhausted parent, the man carrying a duck lunchbox, he became the leader. No one expected, but everyone needed. And all it took was one moment of seeing differently, one moment of kindness, one moment of realizing that sometimes the person people laugh at is the one the world should have been listening to all along.